not sure exactly how this will work, but hey, Mr. Francis, I'll be talking about D&D in this. And the background's just me playing games, so I'd have something to do while I talked. So, D&D is classified as a TTRPG, a tabletop role-playing game, which is where, like any role-playing game, you play a character that you make and go about doing actions as they would. And the tabletop part is the doing it on the tabletop as opposed to like a game. Like this one. And in D&D, a lot of the what you do is controlled by dice, and there are 7 dice in the game. There's the D20, which you'll use primarily. It is the 20-sided die. It goes from 1 to 20, and on this die, you can crit succeed and crit fail, which are dictated by when you roll a nat 1 as compared to rolling a nat 20. And what that means is when you roll the die, you'll either roll on the 1, which is a nat 1, which is a critical fail, or you can roll on the 20, which is a critical success. Critical successes almost always work, and critical fails almost always fail. And a lot of the time, both of them have special actions that'll happen. Such as, like a crit 20, you may deal double damage or double the die you roll on an attack. And with a nat 1, you may fail horribly, drop your weapon, or strike an ally. Something to that effect will happen. The next die is the D12, 1 to 12. This die, a lot, is used for... on one of its main uses, it is one of the classes, the Barbarian's hit die, which is how many hit points the class has, how much damage they can take. And a lot of the time, otherwise, I think it's used for damage. Going down to the next highest is the D10, which goes from 1 to 10. This is used for hit die, damage too. But you roll 2 of them to determine percentile, which is from 1 to 100. Doing this is a lot of the time to dictate if something happens, the chances of stuff. Next highest is the D8, which is again a health die and a damage die. Used to determine how much damage you do and how much damage you can take. After this is the D6, which is quite explanatory because it's in many other games, like Yahtzee. It is used a lot for damage and hit points too. So that, and then finally the lowest die is a D4, which is used almost exclusively for damage. And all these dice are primarily used to determine what you and your character do. I've almost gotten the 5-minute thing just explaining dice. And the whole point of D&D is that you can be creative and experience a whole new world, basically the same way you would a game, but as a group of party in a world that's completely original. It's as if you were to make your own game and have other people play it. Except it's a lot more simpler than designing code for a game. There are many source books to D&D that help you play. There's of course, the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide. The Dungeon Master is the one who creates the world that the players live in, who creates the scenarios that the players run through. His job is to make everything fun for the players and make sure that they have a good time, and develop a narrative that they'll all enjoy. There are quite a many famous DMs. The most prevalent is Matthew Mercer, who is a famous voice actor. He's voiced in many games, anime, and the like. He's done many podcasts of his own, and it's his recording of his D&D games. If you're ever interested in looking in on him, you can probably just search Critical Role, and you'll campaign 1, and you'll probably find it. A bunch of famous voice actors play in his game, so it's really fun to watch. They've also run quite a few games that have like famous actors in them. I think one of them has Vin Diesel in it. And you basically have complete freedom of your character in D&D, unlike what a lot of games will give you. They'll limit your controls to what you can do in the game, but in D&D anything's possible. And your DM may limit you to your alignment though, so you couldn't do completely something out of the ordinary of what your character would do. For example, you could, if you were like lawful evil, not lawful evil, chaotic evil, literally do anything that your character saw fit. If you wanted to burn down an orphanage, go burn down an orphanage. The sky's the limit in this. As long as you can reasonably say your character would do it. But a lot of the time, anyone who just does what they want and kills whoever they want, there's a name for them. They are called murder hobos. They're quite the cliche in Dungeons & Dragons, and there's quite a few cliches in them. I fall under a couple of myself. The most prevalent one that I go under is the dice goblin, as we call them. Because in D&D, you really only ever will need one set of dice. But to some, when they start playing D&D and getting dice, something just clicks in their head, and they decide they need a lot more of them. Which is the case for me. As of now, I think I have about 105 sets of dice, and there's the 7 dice, as I described in every set. So I own quite a lot of dice. And there are many different types of dice, too. Metal, wood, acrylic. Acrylic's the most common. Obsidian. I own an obsidian dice. There's quite a few other gemstone dice. They're quite fragile. I have to keep them in their own bag. But yeah. I could probably rant on more, but I've already exceeded my 5-minute requirement. As a final, I'd like to say, I guess an early goodbye. You were one of my favorite teachers ever, and I really enjoyed having your class all year. Thank you, Mr. Francis. You made English fun. I'll see you in class.